Now, the UN Security Council is meeting this afternoon to discuss the Salisbury nerve agent attack. It comes a day after UK authorities issued arrest warrants for 2 Russians believed to be connected with the attack. The Security Minister, Ben Wallace, has said it is President Putin who's ultimately responsible for the poisoning, which left 1 person dead. Richard Galpin reports.
The revelation these 2 Russian nationals are the prime suspects in the attempted poisoning of Sergei and Yulia Skripal in Salisbury is leading to an increasingly angry response from the government here. This is CCTV footage obtained by the police showing the 2 men coming to Britain in early March. And on the day of the attack, walking along this road close to Mr. Skripal's house, where the nerve agent was smeared on the door handle. All this providing important evidence. The government has also announced that they were agents of this organisation, Russia's military intelligence agency, also known as the GRU. It reportedly sees itself as a war-fighting instrument with special forces in its ranks. So is it possible its operations, including assassination attempts, could go ahead without the approval of Vladimir Putin?
He is the President of the Russian Federation. He is in charge, just like our Prime Minister is accountable for her intelligence services. He is accountable for them. The GRU is a major intelligence service belonging to the military that answers to the Defence Minister, who answers to President Putin. So he is ultimately responsible for his actions of his government.
From Moscow today, very robust denials. The Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova saying the whole story was created to punish Russia and introduce sanctions, while Russian state TV described it as a detective story, an absurd political thriller, with one commentator demanding that Britain put evidence on the table or go to hell. But those denials are not being taken seriously by the authorities here, with the intelligence agencies, including MI6, now tasked by the government to step up their efforts to counter the activities of Russian spies, particularly from the GRU. And at the United Nations Security Council later today, there'll be a diplomatic push by Britain to try to increase the pressure on the Kremlin. The government also wants more sanctions to be imposed. Richard Galpin, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Sarah Rainsford is in Moscow. Sarah, as we just heard from Richard, the Kremlin given their characteristically robust response on this.
That's right. In fact, we just heard from the Kremlin for the first time directly on this half an hour ago. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying that he was repeating again that he said Russia can confirm officially it had nothing to do with the Skripal poisoning, with the events in Salisbury as a whole. Russia wasn't involved. And he said specifically about the suggestion of Vladimir Putin's involvement. He said any suggestion that Russia's leadership or any officials, high or low, had anything to do with the poisoning, he said that was unacceptable. The suggestion or the accusation was utterly unacceptable to Russia. Now, as you heard in Richard's report, he also mentioned the Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. She was one of many to pour scorn, really, on the evidence coming from the UK to try to debunk that evidence. One thing she focused in on specifically was some images from Gatwick Airport. She talked about trolling. She said divine-level trolling because she claimed that the images of 2 men coming through Gatwick Airport, which showed the same time on both images, must have been faked. Now, of course, there are parallel channels in Gatwick Airport, so the suggestion very quickly made on social media that that does not, of course, prove that there was any kind of faking of the evidence. As for the 2 men, the 2 suspects, well, talking about that directly, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that for Russia to take any action against them, even to try to check their identity, there would need to be a specific request for that from Britain. If Britain, he said, sees no point in that, then the Kremlin can only regret that decision.
OK, Sarah, thank you. Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is here. What of the police investigation here now then, Daniel?
Well, obviously the true identities of those 2 men are still very important. The police think they've got good intelligence as to who they are, but they'd like to have some firm evidence as to what the real names of those men are. They're obviously hoping that that will come out of Russia, and they want the help of people here who may have seen them over that weekend between the Friday night and Sunday night, still hoping that someone might come forward and remember something about an interaction or something with these two men. But a couple of other appeal points that have come out from the police this morning. The first is around the suitcase that was being carried by Alexander Petrov as he leaves Heathrow Airport. You can see it in that image there. Quite a distinctive dark grey suitcase with a green stripe. He doesn't appear to have come into the country with that suitcase. So where was that suitcase? Where did he get that suitcase from? Anyone who noticed anything about that suitcase, please be very pleased to hear about it. And secondly, the rucksack that they were wearing on the day of the actual attack itself. It's a grey, olive grey perhaps, backpack which first one of the men was wearing, and then in this image Alexander Petrov is wearing. Anybody notice anything about that? Has anyone seen that? Because again, that comes into the picture and goes out of the picture. So there's still areas that the police are trying to fill in this investigation, not least of all, of course, where that perfume bottle was between when it appears to have been dumped on the 4th of March and when it turns up in Salisbury in June.
OK, thank you for that update.